It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you.
Well, I've got good news, and I've got bad news for you today. Which one do you want first? You want the good news? The Hogs are not going to lose this week. Guaranteed. I guarantee it. The Hogs will not lose. Welcome into the Sports Blitz. Mark Freeman, Maddie Lassiter inside the Cogswell Motors studios. Maddie's going to have to turn his microphone on today because got no callers in. You're welcome to call us in at 968 News. It's 968-6397. We're on from now to noon. Going to be talking sports, starting with high school, local sports, all the way through to the NFL and Major League Baseball, a little NBA maybe. Had a fantasy basketball draft last night. I had the number one pick, and I had the chance to pick either Kevin Durant or LeBron James. And Kevin Durant is favored in this league by the scoring settings to score more fantasy points. So logically, Kevin Durant's the number one overall pick, but not for this guy. I've got LeBron James on my team. You won't even believe who. It's a snake draft, so 1 through 10, and then I don't get to pick again until the 20th pick because it flips. And I could pick 20 and 21. My first pick was LeBron James. My second pick was LaMarcus Aldridge, who was, he was up there on the list as far as where he was projected to be. So I got him in even a better place than I would have expected. And then my number 3 overall pick, Kobe Bryant. Yeah, Brad Caldwell, you heard that right. I picked Kobe Bryant, number 3, partially because I know he'll be back in a few weeks. And if he's completely healthy, Kobe Bryant's a top 10 talent. So may talk a little NBA today, but yeah, I've got Kobe Bryant and LeBron James on my fantasy team. So I'll look forward to a little bit of fantasy basketball this year. Looking forward to the NBA season. I'm one of about 10 people in the entire world who like the NBA. No, that's not true. A lot of us like the NBA, but I'm a little bit more of an NBA fan than a baseball fan. So until right about now, when the baseball playoffs start heating up, I don't really pay much attention. Now I paid a little. Yeah, the World Series is kicking his first pitch on Wednesday, Game 1. But I paid a little bit of attention through the opening rounds of the playoffs. But now I'll pay particular attention to the World Series. A lot of people are like that for college and professional basketball as well. They start conference tournaments, they start paying attention. And I'll pay a little bit more attention, obvious reasons, to the NBA and regular season, college basketball and the NBA. But I'm looking forward to the season. I guess it starts in like 9 days. I think the first game I saw was on the 29th. So looking forward to that coming up here in the next couple weeks. But we've still got plenty of football to talk. Man, I'm looking at Twitter right now, Maddie, and there are injuries all over the place. There were some guys who ended their seasons last night. Did you see in the Denver-Indianapolis game, Reggie Wayne out for the year? He started 189 consecutive games, third longest streak for a wide receiver ever. Now he's out for the year.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be bad when he came out because he was pounding
he
the
was
bleacher.
mad.
And, for a guy like him to be that upset, he knows something's wrong with him.
Torn ACL.
And I did notice it seemed like every other play going into the end of the third quarter, it seemed, is when it started. Every other play, there was somebody hurt on the field in the Broncos game.
Yeah.
So, not looking good.
No, they've got a lot of injuries. The Broncos had the Colts had a bunch of injuries last night. Now it was
their center.
Yeah, the Colts.
What's his name? Satelli or
yeah, sounds right. Then that Butler guy who was the one who was manhandling Wes Welker all night long was literally in his back pocket. And I say literally, he didn't fit in his back pocket, but he was there on him all night long. I was surprised with how much the defense was getting away with in that game. Just getting really what the Colts did. And we'll talk about this game more here in just a little bit. The Colts beat the Broncos and sent Peyton Manning to 6-1. His homecoming, it was touching, but at the end of the night, the Broncos came up short. The Colts got the win. The Colts employed the old Patriots philosophy and really how Peyton's been beaten in the past in the playoffs, where they get up and get physical with his wide receivers, knock off their if you can keep Peyton Manning and his receivers off the timing, and you can keep him from getting, rolling as far as, okay, my receiver's going to be here right then, and I'm going to hit him right. If you can you keep them from getting into that rhythm, you can beat Peyton Manning, and it's easier said than done. But the Broncos showed you last night, or the Colts showed you last night, how to slow down Peyton Manning. You still can't stop him. And, there were a couple series there where he'd get a two-play touchdown drive, or he'd make a couple throws, and you're just like, wow. And he wasn't on last night at all. He was throwing some ducks, and he was, missing receivers short, and he was just not necessarily himself last night. But there are a lot of reasons for it. So we'll talk a little more about that here in a little bit. I'm trying to find a comprehensive list of some of these injuries that took place yesterday. Sam Bradford, torn ACL, done for the year for the St. Louis Rams. We mentioned Reggie Wayne. Jermichael Finley from the Packers is in ICU. He suffered a neck injury Sunday night against the Browns, or Sunday afternoon against the Browns. So it was a good day for football, but a tough day for injuries. Cowboys got a win. 17-3 over the Philadelphia Eagles. I was rooting for the Chicago Bears against the Redskins, but the Redskins were able to get that 45-41 win. And now Dallas is a game clear in the NFC East, but they could have been 2 games clear if the Washington Redskins had just lost. So either way, looks like the Cowboys are in good shape there in the conference, or in the division. Probably the worst division in all of football, if you ask me. But the Cowboys are at least right there in the thick of things. We'll switch gears and get back to the NFL here in just a little bit, but I want to hit some high school football and lead into Hogs here in just a little bit with Hog Talk. But I've asked the question today, today's CrossFit Russellville poll question: what's the biggest problem facing the University of Arkansas football team right now? We were talking before the show, and there are different schools of thought. There are these players have quit. They're not trying hard. There are these coaches suck. They don't know what they're doing. There is these players are not good at all. And then there's these players aren't necessarily the best, but they just definitely don't fit this system. And I think that's sort of where I fit. I do think Maddie made the point that there's a lot of quitting these guys, and I feel like in some cases there are some guys who have sort of laid down, but Arkansas gets beat 52-0 against Alabama. Does that sound familiar? Because that was the score last year also. 52-7 last week to South Carolina, 52-0 again to Alabama this week. You could make the argument that they've quit, some of them. Now, you got guys like Alex Collins, who you watch him, and he's a stud. He's still giving it his best. I saw somebody on Twitter who was just absolutely furious with the Hogville message board guy. If you've seen Jim Rome, he's got these you go to YouTube and look for softball guy and message board guy, and there's all these people that he makes fun of that they say stupid things, or they get excited because they can hit an oversized baseball that's coming underhanded and 2 miles an hour over a fence. Congratulations. They get mad at teams, and then they start saying stupid stuff like Alex Collins should transfer because he deserves to play on a better team than. Shut up, you idiot. If you're a Razorback fan at all, you're just making yourself look dumb. So whoever said that on Hogville, my name's Mark_Freeman on Hogville. If you want to have it out, we can. Please don't come to 1509 East Main, Suite 4, and kill me. Let's look real quickly at our Peters Family Living local sports look. But like I said, answer our CrossFit Russellville poll question. What's the biggest question facing the Razorbacks this football season? What's the biggest problem that they're dealing with right now? We'll come back and answer that here in a little bit. But our Peters Family Living local sports look, we had an interesting night in high school football Friday night. The weather was a little bit odd. It was, sprinkly and just kind of bleh on Friday night. Our featured game of the week was the Lamar Warriors and the Charleston Tigers, and I'll be honest with you, it didn't necessarily go exactly like I thought it would, but it sort of went how I feared it would. Now, in hindsight, looking back to Friday, I was hoping, and I said this to a couple of different people, I was hoping that Lamar could keep it close. And when I watched the game, I was there on the sideline, that Lamar they got a 6-0 lead just a couple seconds into the, a minute into the game, and then they throw an interception, return for a touchdown. They have a fumble that was returned for a touchdown. They have that was recovered. They had another interception that was returned for a touchdown. They had chances in the game to make it a game. They were down 24-6 toward the end of the first half, and they have the ball. I guess it was an interception or a punt. However, they got the ball deep in Charleston's territory, and 4 downs, can't score. And it's just, man, it's hard to watch a team drop passes that could get them back in the game. Then they get the ball back, and they weren't able to score again. Charleston goes down and basically ends the game. But they picked off Ty Storey 3 times. Now that's a story in and of itself that now I've heard good stuff about Ty Storey, and I don't want to take too much away from the Lamar defense, because you pick off Ty Storey 3 times, you've done something right. And these guys played very hard. They were a very athletic and just a fun team to watch. They didn't play all that well on the offensive side of the ball. To give up basically 21 points with your offense, that's cause for concern. So the defense isn't necessarily to be blamed in this case, but I didn't think that Ty Storey played very well. Now, he threw 3 interceptions, and Lamar, like I said, had something to do with that. But for a Division I commit, a guy that's going to go play for the Hogs, we've seen enough of those quarterbacks who will throw 3 interceptions. And if you're in a 3A, Arkansas 3A game that you throw 3 interceptions, I kind of have trouble seeing you playing for the Razorbacks. And he did make a couple good throws, and most of the Charleston offense that I watched was east-west. They had a couple of throws that went down the field. One of them, the receiver, I think it was number 81. I'm trying to think. For Charleston, Lamar corner is right there with him, looks up and is about to reach up to grab the ball, and the receiver just shoves him right in the back, catches it, and scores. And the ref doesn't throw a flag. I was standing beside the ref. He saw it. He was in front of me, and he didn't throw the flag. I thought, wow, well, okay. I guess Charleston's going to get the benefit of the doubt here, but no conspiracy theories. Lamar just lost outright on the field, 31-6. It was our game of the week. It was fun. I appreciate the Lamar fans having us. It was an incredible atmosphere. Lots and lots and lots of people. The Lamar fans showed up in droves. They actually filled their stands. They had the student section and all that full. They had the family and friends in the stands. Then down the fence line, there's another 30 yards of fence line plus, full, 3-4 rows deep of people, and then down on the sideline or behind the end zone, all the way down in front of the locker room was full. And even around the corner into the Charleston side were fans. It was an incredible turnout as far as the fans go for Lamar. So we need to say, again, thank you for having Ryan Smith and I out there on Friday night. And, although Charleston won the conference, at least Lamar knows now that they can play with them, that, they didn't have a good night out of their quarterback. They didn't have a good night out of their offense, but they did find out that they have what it takes to stay on the field with Charleston. And when it comes time for them to play somebody like that in the playoffs, I feel like that they're going to be able to show up and say, all right, we don't have to get so hyped. And believe me, I've never seen a team in a high school football game get so hyped for a regular season game 3 weeks before the end of the season. They have been hyped for this game for a long time, probably to their detriment. Lamar now knows that they can compete. I liked what Coach Jones said when he talked with us. I liked what he said in our interview with him. You can go to rivervalleyleader.com and check that story out that Ryan interviewed Coach Jones Friday night, and you can find out a little bit more about what he said. But he's got his head on straight. He knows what it takes to win. He's won a state championship at Magazine, and he's going to get Lamar recomposed and get them back in, get their heads on straight so that they can prepare for this week's game. They're traveling to Danville on Friday night, trying to take on the Little Johns, who fell 41-14 to Lavaca. As for the rest of the scores, Russellville fell to Little Rock Catholic 51-21. I never know from moment to moment what to expect with the Russellville football team. One week they're putting up 50 points and throwing for 500 yards, and the next week against Little Rock Catholic, they come out slow, sluggish, and they get beat 51-21. They're taking on Little Rock Hall this week. They're traveling to Hall. I've said it for several weeks, and the Cyclones have proven me wrong, but the Little Rock teams, aside from a few, just haven't looked very good so far this year. Hall has been a whipping boy for a lot of teams. I'm not going to say that for Russellville this week, because it seems like every time I've said that, it's come back and bit me in the butt. So the Cyclones traveling to Hall. Pottsville, 50-14 winners over Dover. We've got a big game in the 4A4 this week as they travel to Maumelle, and they host Boonville next week, so that's a big stretch for the Pottsville Apaches. Dover is traveling to Boonville. Clarksville, my alma mater, got a win over Greenbrier. Congratulations to the Panthers, 36-29 over Greenbrier. They're taking on Harrison on the road this week. Dardanelle, 54-7 over Waldron. They're at Subiaco this week. Atkins, 28-21 over Mansfield. They're at Paris. Two Rivers 46-14 over Jessieville. They're at Bismarck. Danville, we mentioned, lost to Lavaca. They're hosting Lamar. And Hector 47-14 win over Union Christian. They're at Decatur. We'll talk about college football as a whole, look at the NFL, maybe even get to a little baseball before we go to Hog Talk here on the Sports Blitz. Stay with us.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KRK4 today.
Raise your hand if you're a terrible score predictor, winner predictor. This guy. I went 1-4 in my college game. With my college games. If you want to show, you just show up at rivervalleyleader.com and you can do a better job than I can in predicting college games. We'll look at those 4 huge mistakes. Now, in my defense, there were some big upsets that took place in the college football landscape on Saturday. The SEC East was just turned on its head, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But let's start with the NFL, because we mentioned Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos going into the Lucas Oil Stadium, a stadium that would not have been built without Peyton Manning, and the Colts getting the win. It was cool how, Maddie, I don't know if you saw it, that Peyton came out, and it was one of those things that were going to honor him, and they were going to say thank you for all his service. Jim Irsay, being the douchebag that he is, decided to open the roof because Peyton hated it being open. He decided to honor him before the game, knowing that Peyton's a creature of habit and wanted to, make sure and keep his structure and everything the way he wanted it. And then, he just basically did everything to. It's sort of a backhanded compliment when you know Peyton Manning the way he is, and he would rather have you, do something after the game or not do anything at all. He would rather you not do anything at all if you were to ask him. But they honor him before the game. He comes out on the field, and, they give him a standing ovation. He's waving. He takes his helmet off, and he says thank you and look very sincere, look very touched. But he throws for 386 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's not enough. The Colts go down. The Broncos go down to the Colts. I have so much trouble with this because I always want to say Peyton Manning and the Colts. 14 years with the Colts will do that to you. Andrew Luck looked very, very good last night. 228 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown. Overcame guys like Trent Richardson, who he's a bum. He's a absolute joke for my fantasy football team. I got him in the second round, thought I got a steal. He's a top 10 projected player, and he goes in the second round. I'm stoked, and he has done nothing. And it may just be because of the fact that he's on my fantasy team that he's done nothing, because my team has been terrible. Long story short, though, Peyton Manning falls, and I feel like it was the best. It was for the best. I don't want Peyton Manning and my Broncos. I'm a Peyton Manning fan. I'm sort of like I'm a LeBron James fan. I'm really only a fan of one team in major sports, and it's the Dallas Cowboys, and it's my birthright. Grew up as a Cowboys fan. I follow specific players. Michael Jordan. I liked Michael Jordan. If he would have played for anybody, he'd have been my favorite player. LeBron James is my favorite player in the NBA now. Follow the Miami Heat now because he left Cleveland. I was a Cleveland fan when LeBron was there. Now the Peyton Manning led Broncos. He's my favorite player on my favorite team now, aside from the Cowboys, and those two are in different conferences, so I can do that. It's legal. But last night, watching him play, I thought, man, big picture, I thought that the Broncos needed to lose a game or two because I want them to win the division. I want them to win home field advantage and have that opportunity coming down the stretch. But I didn't want them to get down to week 14, 15, 16, be undefeated, and think, man, can they do it? Can they make it through? And here come the Broncos. They're going to take down the 72 Dolphins. They're going to get where the Patriots got, but they're going to finish the job. They're going to go 19-0, win the Super Bowl. Well, they're not going to have to worry about that now. They go 6 weeks in. They go undefeated through those first 6 games. Now the Kansas City Chiefs are the only undefeated team in NFL football. The Broncos drop from the ranks of the unbeaten. I'm all right with it. The Colts will keep looking at the Colts logo. The Broncos will try to bounce back next week against the Washington Redskins before they head to their Week 9 bye. And they've got San Diego, Kansas City, New England, Kansas City, Tennessee, San Diego, Houston, and Oakland. They've got a tough stretch right there from weeks 11 to 13, really 14. Tennessee is pretty good too. But they've got Kansas City, New England, Kansas City, back to back to back. That's a tough stretch there for the Broncos. I still think they'll end up, 13-3, 12-4, and have a chance to win home field advantage through the AFC playoffs. Because I think they'll beat Kansas City twice. I really don't think Kansas City can beat them. And somewhere along the line, Kansas City's going to fall off a little bit. The Patriots lost yesterday to the Jets, so they're 5-2. If the Colts can go, or stop saying that, Mark. If the Broncos can go ahead and get a win over the Patriots, they will have that tiebreaker there. And say they do lose 4 games, somewhere along the lines, the Patriots, I believe, will find another loss or 2 here and there. They've got a fairly easy schedule, though, the New England Patriots. They play Carolina on the road. They play at Houston, Cleveland has been surprisingly decent for the last few weeks. They play Baltimore on the road. Buffalo gave New England all they wanted in game 1. So I feel like the Patriots have some losses left in them, but I do think that it was good for the Broncos to get that loss out of the way. I don't like really how it went down, and I was hoping, obviously, for the Broncos to get that win, but it was not to be. Like we mentioned, Kansas City, the only undefeated team now at 7-0 in the NFL. If you had that before the season, you're a multimillionaire, because if you bet that, you made some money. The last team to be undefeated in the NFL was the Kansas City Chiefs, who were 2-14 last year. Wow. Yesterday we saw some good games. Like we mentioned, Kansas City got the win 17-16 over Houston. Case Keenum came in and played pretty well for the Houston Texans in relief of Matt Schaub. I'll wonder if Matt Schaub will ever take another snap with the Houston Texans. He probably will. But following this season, if Case Keenum is able to play well, in the next game or two, I don't know how long Matt Schaub is out, but if Case Keenum's able to prove that he can handle the job and not throw interceptions that get returned for touchdowns, be an interesting conversation for the Houston Texans coming up. The Pittsburgh Steelers get a second win in a row. They beat Baltimore 19-16. That AFC North, it's going to be a tight one down the stretch. It's not filled with particularly great teams, but Pittsburgh bouncing back. Baltimore falls for the second week in a row. Cincinnati, 27-24 winners over Detroit. And we mentioned Cleveland. They'd won 3 games in a row before yesterday. The Green Bay Packers got them 31-13. So Green Bay getting back on the right side of things. They've thrown to receivers. Aaron Rodgers throwing to receivers named guys like Boykin. I don't know. Don't know who he is. But Aaron Rodgers, he can do that because he's bad. He's a bad dude. San Francisco, 4 games in a row on the winning side. They've got a 31-17 win over Tennessee. We mentioned the Jets beating New England 30-27. Sort of a bunk call, if you ask me. Field goal. You can't come over the center. You can't rush the center on a kick, but New England sort of got a bad call against them, in my opinion. I'm not a New England fan by any means, but the call that they got against them to give the Jets another opportunity is a little bit crappy, if you ask me. San Diego, 24-6 winners over the hapless Jacksonville Jaguars. They're awful. And going back to Thursday, Seattle, 34-22 winners over Arizona. Tonight, you've got the Minnesota Vikings and the New York Giants. I think the New York Giants are going to get off the schneid tonight. They're going to go to 1-6, which means you should probably bet your house on the Vikings because my picks have been terrible. Well, let's hit a break real quickly. We've got some college football. We talked about the upsets, man. I was 1-4 this week predicting the games. Now, obviously, I had the Razorbacks losing 41-13 to Alabama. They lost 52-0. So I was even worse than what I predicted. So. We talked about the NFL injuries and a couple more, actually one more right now to report. It looks like it's not been confirmed yet, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fear that the muscle hamster, Russell Martin, has torn his labrum and that his season is over. That's a rough thing there for a lot of people's top fantasy pick in fantasy football. I know it's not the biggest of deals for guys like Russell Martin, because he doesn't care about fantasy football, but for those of us that have Russell Martin on our team, there goes our number 1 pick. Lots of injuries that took place yesterday. We'll see if we can't update with some of those, and we'll look at some college football right after this.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville, online at petersfamilyliving.com, or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
Told you before the break about Russell Martin's injury to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jason Kilburn, Buccaneers fan, listening right now at work. He was able to make me aware of my mistake. It's Doug Martin. Russell Martin's season's over too, but he's a baseball player. He is not the Tampa Bay running back. It was the muscle hamster. Jason was kind enough to point that out for me. Thank you. That's what we love about our listeners. They can fix our mistakes for us immediately. Tell us how stupid we are. Jason says, go Bucks, looking for that #1 pick. I don't know that you're going to be able to snatch it out of the hands of the Giants or the Jaguars. If you can snatch it out of the hands of the Jaguars, you've tried. It's one of those suck for luck type things. You've done it on purpose because the Jaguars are awful. And I don't even think they mean to be awful. They're just terrible. They've got some talent. They don't have a quarterback at all. And you sort of deserve it. When you draft Blaine Gabbert, you should know. Watching that draft, I'm remember, and Matty does too, because he's always talking about Ryan Mallett. You should have drafted Ryan Mallett. I get mad watching and thinking about guys like Blaine Gabbert and Christian Ponder. I didn't like Jake Locker, but he's sort of proven me wrong as far as he's a lot better than I thought he was. But Christian Ponder, Blaine Gabbert, even to an extent Ryan Tannehill has looked better than I thought he would. But what in the world are you thinking? Drafting Blaine Gabbert. He's horrible. Did you not watch him? In college, okay, he looks okay, but you work him out. I know he can throw, 49 out of 50. You watch Sam Bradford and his workout. Now, I know, God rest his ACL, but he lit it up in his pre-draft workout where he's, throwing to receivers in shorts and cutoff shirts, and there's no rush on him whatsoever. But watch what happens when he gets a rush on him. Go watch some tape. You don't watch their best tape. You watch their worst tape. I'm trying to tell these NFL GMs making millions of dollars how to do this, but watch guys like Blaine Gabbert when they play good teams. He never looked good. I don't understand what people saw in him as a quarterback, and he's terrible. So the Jacksonville Jaguars are in bad shape, and part of it's because they've relied on some really bad quarterback play. You got guys like Maurice Jones-Drew. I know he's back from injury, and he's not quite the same, but he can't do anything when there's no threat of the pass. Or I say there's no threat of the pass. There's no threat of a good quarterback play. Now, they're putting up big numbers and mop-up time. Justin Blackmon, 100-yard receiving game. Cecil Shorts playing well at receiver there for Jacksonville. Maurice Jones-Drew's not able to do anything because they can't block. And maybe that's what is causing all the problems for Blaine Gabbert. And I've spent entirely too long talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to get the number 1 pick because they're terrible. Maybe they can trade the rest of their draft for an offensive line, and they can take a number 1 pick. They can get a Bridgewater or, I don't know, whoever they want to get at quarterback. I wasn't terribly impressed with him, although I did like what I saw from him. I wasn't terribly impressed with the performance against, who was it that should have beaten Louisville? They did beat Louisville, didn't they? I'm trying to think here. College football from this last week. Louisville, I think, went down, right? Yeah. Who beat them? Let me look. Louisville lost on Thursday to Central Florida. That's right. I just went right past it. Central Florida looked pretty good. Thank you, voice of God over there. Maddie Lassiter inside the Cogswell Motors studio with me, Mark Freeman. Thank you for joining us on the Sports Blitz today. We talked about the Razorbacks losing 52-0 to Alabama. We'll get back to them here in a little bit. 3-5, 0-4 in the SEC. But the interesting things that happened this week were, one, I was 1-4 in my predictions. I had last week in those games, I had Clemson over Florida State, although I did hedge my bets a little bit. On Friday, I said I wasn't confident in that pick at all. I did have Clemson winning the ACC, but as the week progressed and as the weeks have gone on, I've seen a little bit more from Jameis Winston. I felt like Clemson was probably going to lose that game, but I did pick Clemson to win that game. I had Florida beating Missouri on the road. Boy, was I wrong on that one. Auburn losing to A&M. Who had Auburn beating A&M? Not this guy. LSU, I had them going on the road and beating Ole Miss. And then I had UCLA, Stanford. I had Stanford winning that game. I got one of them right. Florida State put a hurting on Clemson, 51-14 in a number 5 versus number 3 matchup. You go into Clemson as the favored team by 3 points, and you put a 51. You hang a half 100 on them, like Barry Switzer used to say. You've got my attention. 6-0, 4-0 in the ACC. Jameis Winston's Heisman Trophy campaign has really began in earnest. Johnny Manziel, a lot of people are saying he lost the Heisman on Saturday against Auburn. He still threw for 400 yards and like 3 or 4 touchdowns in a loss to Auburn. So I don't think it's statistically that Johnny Manziel lost the Heisman Trophy. 454 yards passing, 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions for Johnny Manziel. Also another 48 yards rushing and another touchdown for Manziel on the ground. I don't think he lost the Heisman, so to speak, with his numbers. I think he lost the Heisman this summer with his actions. That's just my opinion. It's been my long-held opinion. But Jameis Winston has thrust himself into the Heisman Trophy conversation. I'll be interested to see where some of the pundits have him on the list. At this point, it's impossible for me to think he doesn't at least get an invite to New York for the ceremony. If I'm to guess right now, Jameis Winston gets an invite. Mariota at Oregon gets an invite. A.J. McCarron from Alabama has to get an invite. I don't really know who else. Maybe Hundley from UCLA would have gotten an invite before this one, before this loss to Stanford. Do you give Baylor's quarterback? They put up a 71 spot on Iowa State Saturday. Do you give Baylor's quarterback Petty? What's his name? Bryce Petty? Is that his name? May just be making that up. Bryce Petty from Baylor. Do you give him an invite? No, they're putting up huge numbers. System quarterback, but that system's put out RG3, a Heisman Trophy winner in the past, so maybe he gets in the conversation and he gets an invite to New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. But right now, I think it's fairly clear-cut. Teddy Bridgewater, he's getting an invite to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Mariota, not Manziel, he may get an invite, but I wouldn't invite him in my opinion. Braxton Miller, been hurt, maybe tough for him to get an invite. Jameis Winston, he is going to New York. I said a couple weeks ago, at the beginning of the season, I said that Mariota would get an invite, but Braxton Miller would win the Heisman. Missing those games, it's going to be tough for him to get back in there statistically and win the Heisman. Maybe he'll have a moment, that Heisman moment, and Braxton Miller can get back in the conversation. But right now, I said a couple weeks ago, my favorite to win the Heisman would be Marcus Mariota of Oregon. And this week I found some interesting things. Now, I've told you some scores here. Ole Miss did beat LSU 27-24. South Carolina, number 11 in the country, fell to Tennessee 23-21. We mentioned Florida falling to Missouri. That was a 36-17 game. And Georgia, the SEC East, topsy-turvy this week, falls 31-27 to Vanderbilt. So it was a wild weekend, but it got even wilder on Sunday afternoon when the BCS standings come out. The first BCS standings come out, you expect Alabama number 1, Oregon number 2. As Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friends. Florida State, on the strength of that win over Clemson, a top 5 team, number 3 in the country, jumps Oregon into the second spot. And if the season ended last Saturday, Florida State and Alabama will be playing for the national championship game. A lot of Oregon Ducks fans be a little upset about, more than a little upset about that. If that were how it went, it's such a close. It's at 2 100ths of a point. It's 2 1,000ths of a point, I think, that separate Florida State from Oregon in the BCS standings. Now, Oregon does face Stanford. They do face some quality competition coming down the stretch. Florida State's got to take on Florida, and I'm trying to think. I'll look at their schedule real quickly, who else they have left on their schedule, but they've got some games against top competition. Miami in 2 weeks at home on November 2nd. That's going to be a big game for the Seminoles, so they've got some chances to bolster their resume or fall. And Oregon, like we mentioned, they've got Stanford in a couple weeks, who's number 6 on the list, so that should help them as far as their strength of schedule. They've got UCLA, number 12 in the country, coming up this week, and Stanford the next week. So Oregon's got their chance coming up the next 2 weeks to make their point as far as, we're the second best team, or maybe even the first best team, depending on how Alabama does against LSU in a few weeks. But it's pretty well set right now. Alabama is far and away the number 1 team in the country. They proved it Saturday. You Razorback fans, I know I'm trying to spend as much time as I can talking about other things because I don't have anything nice to say about the Razorbacks, but a lot of that has to do with Alabama. They look good, man. A.J. McCarron is very, very good. I never have given him the credit that I guess he deserves. Nick Saban and this team, they're loaded. They've got Derrick Henry, who had an 80-yard touchdown run toward the end of that game, and he made a big tackle on a special teams play to keep Arkansas pinned deep. He's the all-time leading high school rusher in history. He's got more rushing yards in high school football than anybody ever. He's like 5th-string running back. He barely gets on the field, and he ends up with 6 carries for 111 yards. It's just an embarrassment of riches for Alabama right now. They're so loaded, it's not even funny. They didn't even play Alti Tenpenny, one of the top 5 running backs in the country last year, an Arkansas product out of North Little Rock. They had Derrick Henry 6 carries for 111 yards. That's a nice little 18.5-yard average and a touchdown. Kenyon Drake, 8 carries for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. TJ Yeldon, 12 carries for 88 yards and another touchdown. A.J. McCarron, 15 of 21 for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just a workman-like effort. His QBR, 94. That means out of 100, they rate everything A.J. McCarron did in the game. 94% of the time he made the right decision. He made the right play. Wow. Now, I know it's not hard when you're playing Arkansas right now. Brandon Allen was 7 for 25 with 2 interceptions, a 15 QBR. 1.5. Might as well have been 1.5. But A.J. McCarron in Alabama looking very good. They sit atop the BCS standings. It's no surprise. Let's hit a break real quickly. We've got to talk about the Hogs. Let's talk this out. Let's put ourselves on the couch, as Weldon used to say. We're gonna talk this out. If you have to cry on my shoulder, you can. 968 News is the phone number. Stay with us and let's talk Hogs versus Alabama. What's the biggest problem facing Arkansas the rest of this season and just right now in general? Stay with us.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peter's family's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peter's Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the 4s.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
What's the biggest issue facing the Arkansas Razorbacks right now? We've asked that question. It's our CrossFit Russellville poll question of the day. Appreciate you chiming in, those of you that did. You know, I wondered coming in, is it, you know, I was thinking about this morning, is it one position that if things were just changed at quarterback that you would be better off if Brandon Allen wasn't the quarterback? Look, I understand he hadn't played well. 7 for 25, 91 yards, and 2 interceptions against Alabama. A 15 QBR. It's not good. But we remember what it was like with A.J. Derby. He couldn't throw it to a wide open receiver. What do you think he would do against Alabama that didn't involve defecating in his own pants on the field? It would be awful. There's nobody. Maybe Austin Allen could do better, but you made that decision in week 3 that you're not going to bring him out and burn his red shirt. You're going to keep that. I've heard a lot of people talking about Rafe Peavy. He'll come in and he'll make the difference. I've told you my thoughts on him. Just from watching the highlights and stuff that I've seen, he looks good. He looks really good. Ty Story looks good too. But who are they playing against? I don't know. Brandon Allen 2-3 years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago, was playing against top-notch competition, and he threw 36 touchdowns and no interceptions during the regular season for Fayetteville High School. It's, to me, I'd get very leery of saying, well, this guy's going to be the answer. He's going to come in. He's going to make the difference. I'm from Clarksville. I remember Gary Brashears and how he was going to be the difference for the Razorbacks. I know there are some extenuating circumstances. You don't have to tell me about it. I know all about the family issues and the extenuating circumstances with Gary Brashears and his family. But he was this strong-arm guy who he played against pretty decent competition, although albeit it was smaller classification Arkansas competition, sort of what Ty Story's doing. He's a cautionary tale for me as far as expecting somebody to come in and make a difference immediately. Rafe Peavy may be the guy, but if he's not, remember I said this, it's easier said than done to just, watch a guy's highlight tape and think he's going to be the answer. Maybe it's talent, maybe it's coaching, maybe it's effort. Do you think these guys have quit? I hesitate to say that because it's really, really hard for me to point. And you can see when plays happen and players quit, but I don't know that I'm necessarily seeing that. When I think a guy's quit is when a guy's running open and you're just kind of like, you don't go after him, or there's a guy that's running in up to the line and you're a linebacker and you just kind of tiptoe up there and you just watch him go by and you just reach out after him. I don't really want to tackle you. That to me, or those are the obvious telltale signs, and I don't necessarily see that with this team. I've asked the question today, and Chris Young answers the quarterback is the big issue. He said he might be good in practice, but when he's put in real pressure situation of the game, he falls apart. He continues to throw into double and triple coverage because he doesn't know how to check down his receivers, which severely limits our passing game, which in turn hurts our running game because the teams stack the line to stop the run because they know we can't pass the ball. We have a lot of problems with this year's team, but in my opinion, that is the biggest. Chris Young, Brad Caldwell, a caller and former likely or a normal contributor to the Sports Blitz, agrees with you. He thinks Brandon Allen and quarterback play would be the biggest issue for the Razorbacks this year. I'll agree with you in that the fact that Brandon Allen's struggling so much is affecting everything. It is affecting the running game. You got guys like Alex Collins and Jonathan Williams who are good. 4- and 5-star running backs that, depending on which service you're looking at, came in and with a lot of accolades, and they're very good. They're talented running backs, but they can only do so much. And when they're getting stacked up in the backfield, or when the team's pressing up on the receivers and daring Arkansas to beat them, and they can't, there's only so much the running backs can do. But that's where I think that the blame has to be spread around. And I don't want to necessarily get into a blame game because eventually you just expect the guys to get better. You expect that they'll improve, but I've said it for a couple weeks now. When your best wide receiver is Javonte Herndon, no offense to Javonte, but really, have you heard anything from him for the first 3 years of his career? No. What did Nolan Richardson always say? If the dog's gonna bite, he'll bite as a pup. You remember Joe Adams and Jarius Wright and Greg Childs, and I hesitate to compare anybody, and Kobe Hamilton even. I hesitate to compare anybody to those guys. It's a different system, a different day, but they came out as freshmen and sophomores, and you could tangibly see on the field and the impact that they made and would make in the future. You never saw anything from Javonte Herndon other than just another guy who could contribute. Horton, another one of those guys. Seems like Hawkins and Eric Hawkins, and who's the other one? Who's the receiver that they always bring in and hand it off to him, Maddie? I'm just drawing a blank right now. Eric Hawkins is the one that I just mentioned, but who's the other one?
Keon Hatcher.
Hatcher. That was another H, I knew. These guys are contributors, but they're not a number one. I watched the Dallas Cowboys last year, and Dez Bryant was working his way that way, and you could see that he was going to be the number one. But up until last year, it was Miles Austin and Jason Witten and Dez Bryant. We're going to get you the ball some, but we're just kind of trying to work you in. This year, you watch the Cowboys, and you see Dez Bryant catching 8, 9, 10. He had like 18 passes thrown his way yesterday. He was the man. And I'm not saying that that Arkansas has to go get them a Dez Bryant, but it'd be nice if they could. But they don't have a guy who is their go-to as a receiver. And you think that doesn't hurt Brandon Allen? He has Hunter Henry as a tight end, it's their pass-catching tight end. Do you think it doesn't hurt Brandon Allen that when Hunter Henry's in the game, they know he's the pass-catching tight end, and that Austin Tate or Lowen or whoever else is in the game is the blocking tight end? They're sort of playing with a hand tied behind their back right now. I think that the mixture right now of issues that's come up for the Razorbacks is not about necessarily effort and not about coaching as much as not having the Jimmies and the Joes to compete with this style of play. You got Bobby Petrino's style where they want to spread it out and they want to throw Keon Hatcher and Eric Hawkins and Javonte Herndon and Julian Horton. Those guys would make a difference. They could all chip in and they could make it work. But when you're in this system where you need a guy who, you look at the Wisconsin teams of old, Nick Toon, he's not a superstar. He was very good at Wisconsin. Now he's playing the NFL. He was a go-getter. He was a one. Arkansas doesn't have a one. I think that's got a lot to do with it. Lucy Smith said, I asked, what's the biggest problem with the UA football program and what they're facing right now. Lucy Smith said they got their butts beat down. Thank you, Lucy. Appreciate the input there. Ryan Martin said there are too many problems to pick just one. QB is making bad decisions. Wide receivers can't get separations. Running backs are great, but they have nowhere to run, and that's just the offense. I totally agree. Ryan Martin was the best man at my wedding. He's a good man, and he's totally right here. There are too many problems, and that's what I think the main problem is. The main problem is not one in specific. It's that there are too many problems. You can't run a brand new system that's completely contrary to the one you were running before and expect it to look pretty. It's not going to look pretty. When you go from air it out to pound it out, you're going to have issues. I know that Ben Herbert changed the bodies of some of these guys, but you can't necessarily put it up here. You know, you've got guys who they were brought in to play this, finesse style, and now he's asking them to pound all day. It's just not necessarily going to work. It'd be like me. I'm not that kind of guy. If I were to play in for those basketball fans around this area that know the Marty Barnes, he was at Rogers when I was in high school, but he's from Russellville. He coached at Russellville for years. His style of play is basically passing around all day, be physical on defense. We don't care if we win 2-0. We just going to get the layup every possession. That's not my style. I was one of those who I wanted to run. I wanted to shoot threes. I would have been a Golden State Warrior from day one. I love that style of play. You put me in Marty Barnes style in basketball, it just wouldn't work. It'd be sort of like putting Big Papi on the 97 Marlins in baseball and asking him to manufacture a run. He's a home run hitter. That's what he wants to do. He's not going to get up there and bunt somebody over. That's not what he does. This team, as far as the way Brett Bielema has it assembled right now, I talked about him playing with one hand tied behind their back. Brett Bielema really doesn't have a choice right now. He's got to take his licking. He expected, and he said it more than once, he's disappointed, and he expected things to be better. But really, if you look at the schedule, I know the scores don't necessarily look like you wanted them to, but did you expect anything different from any of these games outside of Rutgers? I didn't. I had Arkansas right where they are, except for beating Rutgers. I told you before the season, Maddie, they're not beating Florida, they're not beating A&M, not beating South Carolina, not beating Alabama. Next week they're going into the 11th ranked Auburn. Guess what? They're going to get beat. I had them predicted before the season started to win that game and to win the Mississippi State game and get to 6. If they don't beat Mississippi State, they're not going to win another game the rest of the year. Just saying. And they're not. They're not going to beat Auburn. They're not going to beat Ole Miss. They're not going to beat LSU. You better beat Mississippi State. I guess that's in Little Rock on November the 23rd, or you're not going to win a game the rest of the year. That's the reality. I know Brett Bielema is not happy about things. He's saying all the right things. He doesn't like it, and who does like it? You want Arkansas to compete in every game. You want them to have a chance and at least show glimmers of hope. Even in Bobby Petrino's first year, they beat LSU, I believe it was. They jumped up and caught a couple teams that, or at least played well against teams that were predicted to be better than them. There's some growing pains right now, and I want to caution fans to not necessarily jump off the boat right now. I saw some people on Facebook and Twitter who were taking to the coaching talk and saying, "Oh, Gus Malzahn, he's much better." And I want to get Brad on to talk about this because he and I sort of disagree on this. I hate his argument about this, about Gus Malzahn is such a better coach. Look what he's done immediately with Auburn. He's recruited a lot of those players to Auburn, and it's not a 180 turn from what they were doing before to what they're doing under Gus Malzahn.
And not only that, we heard a stat the other day, I think you were with me, Mark, in the car, that Auburn averages more stars on their team than even Alabama. So it's not even that argument to me is just so ridiculous. They were
talented.
They were terrible last year. They are talent-wise, they are loaded. Arkansas is devoid of talent. They're not even in the same hemisphere, not even in the same universe, the two situations. So I don't understand, well, look what he's doing there. Well, yeah, he wouldn't do that here. Brett Bielema may go there and do something completely different than he's doing here. You just don't know. And like you said, he recruited those players. They're playing the same style as what they were recruited for. So obviously they're doing well. So It's not a surprise, but
apples to hand grenades. You know, you're comparing two opposites. There's just no getting around it. Auburn and Gus Malzahn, good coaching job. Don't take anything away from him. But when you had Cheez-It over there sucking for 2 years, you know, the team quit on him. They had talent, and they're showing it now. Auburn's number 11 in the country. They're coming into Fayetteville week after next, and they're going to put it on Arkansas. I'm sorry. Maybe Arkansas can score some points, but Auburn's going to win that game. Ole Miss, they beat LSU this week. Now you're traveling to the Grove. Ask LSU what happens when you go to the Grove. It's not easy. That young talent toward the end of the year for Ole Miss, one of the best recruiting classes in the country last year, it's going to be tough to handle. And if you don't get a win against Mississippi State, it's all she wrote for the season. It's 3 wins to start the season and 9 losses in a row. Don't quit on Brett Bielema. Let him get some players in here, and we'll see things turn around. It won't be next year. They're going to be bad next year again. They're going to be fighting for a bowl berth. But if you can see the players buying in, if you can see the team looking a little bit better on the field, just understand that Brett Bielema is going to turn things around, especially if this staff stayed together. They're going to turn things around. So we'll talk with Jason on Wednesday. He had some thoughts that he said he wanted to share on Wednesday. Maybe we'll get Brad on to talk about Gus Malzahn and why he is a Gus lover. But no, we'll talk about plenty more on Wednesday. Also Wednesday night, Game 1 of the World Series, Red Sox Cardinals from Boston, 7:07 first pitch. Adam Wainwright, John Lester. World Series preview a little bit on Wednesday. Come back and join us at 11 o'clock at rivervalleyleader.com for more Sports Blitz. For Maddie, I'm Mark. So long. Y'all have a good day.